Is it possible to be awakened? And if so, what is it like? And then how do you explain God or spirit or anything under that category to someone who doesn't believe? Let's start with awakening, because awakening is subjective experience. It is not only possible, but it's a given that we are to awaken in the same way that it's a given that the seed of a flower is to bloom. Not to say that every seed that's planted will necessarily bloom in a flower, but it's a given. This is why the seed was planted, is because we're going to get flowers or whatever plant we're planting. And so awakening is a natural expression of life. And from a subjective person experience, it's a natural expression of our own growth. It's not that as a seed, I'm going to bloom in one way in this lifetime. I might bloom in another way. I might not bloom quite yet, whatever. But in any case, it's an ever growing or ever blooming process. Synonymize bloom with awakening, because that's basically what we're talking about. The Buddha describes as the lotus flower. And certainly the other piece of that is so profound about that metaphor is that the lotus flower blooms out of dirt. It blooms out of what is previously thought to be poisoned or disgusting or no good. And it's funny because a lotus flower can only bloom when it's that. And so that's an expression of how we need the suffering, we need the pain in order to be able to bloom into a flower. Without it, we would not have the sufficient conditions for it to happen. Not to say that there aren't flowers that have just bloomed and we come upon them and they're already there, but from a full experience perspective, a Buddhist perspective, which the Buddha is someone who is talking from the experience of someone who awakened in his lifetime. He didn't descend from awakening, the Christ describes. I descended from heaven. I came from heaven to serve. The Buddha came the other direction. He felt a human and an ego identified and then awakened into a flower. And so that's what I would say. We're bound for it. It's going to happen. And actually, it is happening. It's just we're at one part of the process. A spiral is another way to think about it. Awakening is happening right now in us all individually. It's very specific to our circumstances, very specific to what we're going through. But just like a flower, every stage of the process is the flower blooming. It's just we say the flower's in bloom when we can see its petals out wide and everything, which is an amazing thing. But it's like the whole process. If you watch a time lapse of a flower blooming, that's even better than just seeing a picture of a flower. The whole process is so much doper. So I think that's to answer the question about awakening. To the person that I would say doesn't believe in God or in spirit, first, if you really have a problem with it, like you hate what other people did to you using God's name, I say let it go completely. There are plenty of spiritual practices or whatever you want to call it, like Buddhism is one, where you don't need the concept at all. And I think that's useful, actually. And there are plenty of times where I embrace that because it's actually more useful to me. But if you are wanting to repair your relationship to the idea of God or are open to it, but just aren't convinced from an intellectual perspective, I would say that you can maybe understand God as that which is doing the growing of the plant. It's the sameness, like the same beingness or happeningness of what makes the ocean go. Because what makes the ocean go is the way the moon is. And there's no beginning. There's no first causer in the way that people talk about there must be a God because there had to have been a first cause. God is here now in us right now. As I put the record on and got out of my way and didn't think, oh, I need to do it this way, I need to do it this way, and just let it happen. From a human perspective, that's sort of my subconscious, unconscious, whatever, that just knows how to do it. But that is the wave, that is the ocean, that is God. It's this essence, maybe you could say, that is doing the stuff. And so it's hard to put it into words, obviously, after a certain point, because in order to be doing something, there needs to be a doer. But this is a doing with no doer. This is just a dance that keeps like an infinity symbol. It just keeps circling in on itself. And God is that entire thing. God is like the whole, is all of it. And God is the tree and the roots and the earth, and I'm a leaf. God is with you at all times. And this is a very mystical interpretation, but as me, who at times identified as atheist for sure, and agnostic for most of my life, this is the path that has allowed me to open to it, to recognizing, oh, it's through the doorway of my own firsthand experience that I can now see through and see the truth in what people describe when they talk about God or spirit or whatever. It's the part of me that has always been here that I don't have a name for because we just make up fun names like God or experience or spirit or soul or subjectivity or the mind or whatever it is. So if you feel too much animosity toward it, it's best to let it go, because the whole point is to let it go. God wants you to let it go.